So I think what's so fascinating about the working world right now is that it is in complete flux. Everything's been thrown up into the air, and quite frankly, we're not 100% sure where all the pieces are going to land. And I think a lot of things are on the table. People are questioning, do we need a corporate headquarters or not? That's being debated. What is the role of remote work? If it's possible, why should I come to the office? I've heard stories of people picking up the phone and calling their CEOs, calling their bosses and saying, "Oh, it's so fantastic, our family's living the dream. We've moved to Florida, and the company's like, but we're in Kansas, and they're like, I know, it's just wonderful. We've always wanted to live in Florida, and now we can. And like nobody asked, do you mind if we move to Florida? And so I think a lot of companies are like, do we say anything? Is that a problem? But we wanted everybody to come back to the office. And the answer is we are kind of have to wait and see. And so when you ask what should companies be asking themselves, I think they have to put everything on the table and ask themselves, what is the future of work? One of the things that I think will happen is there's just going to be more flexibility. So in the past, sort of pre our comfort with remote work, you'd have to ask permission if I can work from home next Thursday. And I think what's going to happen in the future is people are going to pick up the phone and send an email and saying, hey, I'm just going to work from home today, and everything will be fine. Like everybody will be fine with that. But I think everything's on the table, and those discussions have to happen. And you cannot dig your heels in and say, well, this is the way it used to be and this is the way it's going to stay. It's just not going to work out well.
I don't believe in the concept of strengths and weaknesses. Everything has context. I believe we have attributes, we have characteristics that we have to know. And in some contexts, those attributes are strengths, and in sometimes they're weaknesses. So I'll give you the example that I like to use all the time because it's funny, is I am chronically disorganized. I'm very disorganized, right?
You are?
Terribly, yeah. And I've always thought of this as a weakness. Simon, what are your weaknesses? I'm disorganized, right?
Yeah.
So I was at a networking event many years ago, in the early days of my career, and I met a guy and he was like, Simon, you're fantastic. Would love to work with you. Here's my card. And if I was organized, I'd be texting from the cab on the way home or emailing the next day when I get to work, of course. But I'm disorganized. I lost the business card almost immediately, right? 2 weeks later, I found the business card at the bottom of a briefcase. And so I emailed him. I said, I don't know if you remember me. We met 2 weeks ago. I'd love to reconnect. And he wanted to work with me more because he thought I was busy. He thought there was such high demand for me.
Yes, that's why it took so long.
Right? That's why it took so long.
Yes.
So is being disorganized a strength or a weakness? The answer is it depends. In that context, it was actually a strength. In different contexts, when somebody says, I need you to get this done by this time, it can be a liability. So what stacking the deck means is putting yourself in situations where your attributes are more likely to reveal themselves as strengths, and try and avoid situations where your attributes are more likely to pull you back, right? So stacking the deck is not about cheating. It's about making sure that you're in the right place that make you strong and avoiding the places that make you weak. So for example, if you're bad at math, don't do jobs that require lots of math, right?
Right. Yes.
Like it's I know it sounds trite, but
no, it's true.
It's sometimes that silly, like I love working with others. I love working on teams, right? And so when a project comes up, I always make sure that I have a group that I can work with because I know I'll do better work. If I work by myself, it's more stressful and the work is a lower standard. And so I know that about me. I know that I like working with people. So I stack the deck. I try very hard to work at least with one other person or to work on a team to complete a project, right?
Right.
As opposed to leave this to me, I'll get this done by myself. Some people, that is their strength, to work by themselves, not me.
Right.
So again, I try and stack the deck by working with people as often as possible when I have difficult things to do. So all populations sift across the standard deviation, the old bell curve, right? If you have high performers in a population, you're gonna have low performers, you're gonna have an average, always, right? What the law of diffusion tells us is that the first 2.5% of any population are your innovators. These are your big idea people, right? Then the next about 13.5% of your population are early adopters. These people are very comfortable spending extra money, time, energy, making some sort of sacrifice to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves, that reflects who they are. Then you have the majority, the early majority and the late majority, a little more cynical, a little more practical. What's in it for me? Will I get my money back if it doesn't work? Will I get in trouble? That kind of thing, a little more risk averse. And then finally, the last 16%, you have your laggards. The only reason they do anything is because you basically don't have a choice anymore.
Right.
What the law of diffusion tells us is that if you want to have mass market success, if you want an idea to spread or be sticky, you have to achieve between 15 and 18% market penetration. And then a social phenomenon happens, a tipping point, and it just goes. But because most of us want the majority, we aim all of our efforts at the majority, which actually doesn't work because the majority will not try something new until somebody else has tried it first. And so there's nothing that I'm doing that's mythical or magical, right? There's social phenomena that I've written about, other people have written about. The law of diffusion is not my idea. It's Emmett Rogers from the 1960s, The only thing that I did, like anything that works, is I had the discipline to do it.
That's right.
You want to get into shape, you have to have the discipline to do it. You want to be healthy, you have to have the discipline to do it. And you have to get comfortable that you cannot predict when success happens. You just have to believe the process works and you stick to the process. That's all I did. Very often when we do these things, we show up with a selfish disposition, right? I hope they like me. I hope they like my work. I hope they buy my book. I hope they, go to my website. I hope they follow me on social media. And we act that way. We put a picture behind us on the PowerPoint, and it has all of our social media handles on it, and it has a phone number and a website and an email address.
Right.
And we say at the end, somebody asks a question, it's like, question whatever, and we reply, well, you'll have to read my book, or well, that's from my book, and it's like we put ourselves, and that's, people can tell. And in those cases, we're not rooting for you. In fact, we're going to try and trip you up.
Right.
Because we can't help ourselves. It's entertaining.
Yes.
You put yourself at the front, we'll have fun with that. And so I've learned early to show up with a giver's mentality, where I don't care if they like me. I don't care if they buy a book. I don't care if they follow me on social media or not. All I know is I have something that I think is really valuable, and I'm going to give it to you. I want to give it to you. And I believe, and I'm giving it to you with all of my gusto and all of my energy. And so I remember, people would apologize because they said there's going to be this size event and only half the number of people showed up, and they're apologizing. And I know a lot of speakers who would get angry. You promised me this size audience. And I was like, well, I just feel sorry for the people who didn't show up, because the people who did show up are going to get all of me.
Right.
I hold back nothing. And I think when you show up with a giver's heart, and I literally will say that before I go out on the stage, I will literally say under my breath before I step on the stage, you're here to give. I will remind myself that what I'm about to do is an act of generosity. I think I have something pretty and I want to share it. And people can tell.
Yeah, authenticity.
People can tell. And so you have a wide berth when you show up with a giver's heart. You can make mistakes and you can stumble over your words, and you can talk a little bit too much like I am right now, and we're just fine with it.
Yeah.
So I think, we're highly attuned social animals, and if you show up to give, you can, believe it or not, you can experiment a lot.